Okay, picture this. You wake up at 2 a.m., right? You wander into the kitchen for a glass of water, flick on the light, and bam! You see those little brown shapes scattering at lightning speed, completely disappearing under the stove or behind the toaster. It is literally the worst feeling. Well, today, in this explainer, we're going to look at how to end that nightmare permanently. And no, we're not talking about bringing in complicated, expensive chemicals. We're going to dive into some ancient wisdom, following a real documented experience from a working Amish farm.
$400. That is the price of pure, unadulterated frustration. You go out, you buy the fancy sprays, you call in the exterminators, you basically force your whole family to evacuate the house because of all those toxic gases, and then, what happens? The bugs just come back. The sources we're unpacking today detail a 31-year struggle with this exact headache. It's basically paying money just to lose a never-ending war.
But everything kind of shifted back in 2019. By complete chance, the author of our source found themselves visiting a working Amish farmhouse right in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Imagine walking into this bustling, warm kitchen. The windows are wide open, there are absolutely no screens to keep the bugs out, and there's food just sitting right out, uncovered on the table. You would fully expect to see those little black bug traps we all hide behind our trash cans, right? But here's the crazy part. There wasn't a single insect in sight. The wooden floors were spotless, and all they had was this one little ceramic dish near the wall with some white powder in it.
Seeing this, of course, prompted a burning question. They asked the grandmother of the house, Mrs. Stoltzfus, what her secret was to keeping this giant farmhouse kitchen totally bug-free. She just gave this quiet little smile, walked right over to her pantry, pulled down 2 glass jars, looked over, and simply said one word: together.
Section 1. The Sugar and Boric Acid Secret.
So Mrs. Stoltzfus explained that the first jar held boric acid. Now, before you hear the word acid and assume it's some harsh synthetic poison, it's actually not. It's a completely natural mineral mined straight out of the earth. People have historically used it in their homes since the 1860s as a laundry booster and even a wound cleaner. But the real secret to why it's so perfect for pest control: insects literally cannot detect it or smell it, so they have zero instinct to avoid it. Okay, so what about the second jar? That was sugar, but there is a massive catch here. It absolutely must be powdered sugar. She showed how you mix equal parts of the boric acid and the powdered sugar, and then you just shake it up in a jar until it looks like fine snow. Why powdered? Well, it's brilliant. A roach physically cannot separate the enticing sweet sugar particles from the lethal acid particles. After mixing, she just placed tiny little mounds of this snowy powder onto flat lids. Now, the absolute most crucial part of this whole operation is where you actually put the bait. Her advice was super clear. Stick to the dark spots where roaches travel while the house sleeps. We're talking behind the refrigerator, under the stove, tucked away inside cabinets. Oh, and here is a massive warning highlighted by pest control experts. Do not spray any bug killer near these lids. Seriously, don't do it. The roach actually needs to eat the bait and walk away alive so it can carry it back to its nest. If you kill it on the spot with a spray, you've just saved the rest of the colony.
Section 2. How the colony collapses inside. So how does this farmhouse magic actually do its thing? Well, a really fascinating scientific bulletin from the USDA way back in 1908 breaks it down. Boric acid is intentionally slow. The roach eats the mixture, and it takes about 72 hours for internal dehydration to set in. That delay is exactly what you want. It gives the insect plenty of time to waddle back to its nest. Once it's there, other roaches end up grooming it and feeding on it, which spreads the compound through the colony like wildfire. A single one of those little bait stations can unknowingly wipe out up to 2,000 insects. And hey, this Amish wisdom isn't just a bunch of nice folklore. An actual field study done by Auburn University in 2013 proved that this exact method causes a massive 94% reduction in German cockroach populations in just 14 days. And the wildest part, all of this is done using a powder that costs like $4. But what if you're dealing with ants? Good news, the exact same principle works. You just tweak the recipe a little bit. Mix 3 parts powdered sugar to 1 part boric acid, and then add a splash of warm water to make this thick, sweet syrup. Drop a little bit of that on some waxed paper right along their ant trails. The worker ants will gobble up this toxic syrup, carry it straight back to the queen, and boom, the entire colony collapses in a matter of days. Cornell University even called this the single most cost-effective ant control method out there. Now, if you live in an older house, you know they have these little gaps everywhere. Builders actually call them entry highways for bugs. Think gaps around water pipes or those hollow spaces behind dishwashers and baseboards. You don't need to go crazy caulking every single one. You can just grab a small plastic squeeze bottle and puff a super light, almost invisible dusting of dry boric acid straight into those gaps. Honestly, just a tiny amount is enough to protect a whole house.
Section 3. Bay leaves, the natural shield.
Okay, so once you've successfully eliminated the bugs inside, how do you stop new ones from ever crossing the threshold? Well, Mrs. Stoltzfus had a second secret: whole dried bay leaves. Actually, that is the exact reason her kitchen smelled so distinctly wonderful. Bay leaves contain an incredibly potent compound called eucalyptol. To us, it smells great, but insects find it absolutely unbearable. It acts like an invisible force field. A roach will literally refuse to cross a barrier of bay leaves, and a 2016 Penn State Extension study actually confirmed that these leaves repel roaches by a staggering 87%.
So how did she set this up? She just took some dried bay leaves and bruised them gently in the palm of her hand. You don't want to crush them to dust, just bruise them enough to release those essential oils. Then she popped 3 or 4 leaves into every cupboard, put 2 on the windowsills, and hung a cute little cheesecloth bundle by the basement door. The Amish swap these out about 4 times a year, and the whole thing costs about $2.
Section 4. Why did companies hide this secret? Which brings us to a rather glaring question. If this works so perfectly, why did an entire generation forget that their grandmothers used it? The answer, according to our sources, boils down to a very big number: $22 billion. Yep, that is the massive annual revenue of the American pest control industry. They thrive on recurring chemical treatments. Back in the 1950s, chemical companies rolled out massive ad campaigns to convince everyone that these old, simple powder methods just didn't work anymore. Boric acid got shoved to the back of the shelf, and people just forgot.
Our explainer really points out a dramatic contrast here. Think about it. On one hand, you have this modern business model that charges you around $90 a quarter for chemical sprays. Sprays that intentionally fade away in about 6 weeks, practically guaranteeing that you come back as a customer. On the other hand, you have this Amish wisdom. It costs $4 total, uses natural minerals, and works for years.
And that longevity is key. The really crucial thing to understand here is that boric acid does not break down, and it does not evaporate or lose its potency. That almost invisible dusting you puff behind your refrigerator today, it's still going to be sitting there, quietly taking out roaches 3 years from now, just as long as it stays dry. It simply doesn't go away.
So, to wrap up the personal story from our source, after that eye-opening visit to the Amish farm, they went home and completely changed their approach. They threw away every single toxic spray can, canceled their exterminator contract, and just followed Mrs. Stoltzfus's method to the letter. The final result? 6 full years without a single bug in the house.
So, I've got to leave you with this question. Which room in your house has been the absolute worst battleground for bugs? And more importantly, are you ready to try a little Amish wisdom and actually reclaim your home this weekend? Seriously, give it a shot and see what happens over the next 14 days. And hey, if you're curious about the secret the Amish put in their wells to keep their water perfectly pure for a century, well, you'll just have to join us for our next explainer.